Israel has shut its embassy in Dublin, blaming the Irish government's anti-Israel policies. Its foreign minister said Ireland had crossed every red line. What now lies ahead for Irish-Israeli relations? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, the closure of Israel's embassy in Ireland marks a further strain on relations between the two countries. The move came after Ireland voiced support for South Africa's International Court of Justice case against Israel, accusing it of genocide. But Israel so far hasn't applied similar measures to other countries supporting that case. So why has Ireland been singled out?
Relations between the two countries have long been strained, deteriorating even further since the start of the Israel-Gaza conflict.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Irish support for Palestine has brought out thousands onto the streets, with Dublin seeing regular protests. An opinion poll last year showed over 70% believe Palestinians lived under systematic Israeli oppression. In May last year, the Irish government, along with Spain and Norway, formally recognised Palestine, prompting Israel to pull out its ambassador from Dublin. But the decision to close the embassy completely came after Ireland backed the petition accusing Israel of genocide at the International Court of Justice.
There is a difference between criticism and anti-Semitism based on the delegitimisation and dehumanisation of Israel. This is how Ireland allowed itself to behave towards Israel.
Irish politicians have rejected the country as anti-Israel.
Recognising a state of Palestine, which we did with Norway and Spain, and which other countries have done, is not a hostile act and should not be seen as a hostile act.
The Palestinian ambassador to Ireland, Jilan Waba Abdelmajid, in a statement to Roundtable, urged states to review all diplomatic, political and economic ties with Israel. How will Israel react to more countries recognising Palestine and joining the ICJ petition? And are further Israeli embassy closures possible in more European capitals?
Well, let's meet our guests. I'm delighted to say here in the studio with me is Yossi Mekelberg. He's Senior Fellow at the Middle East Programme at Chatham House. And Kamel Hawwash is a Palestinian academic and political analyst. And joining us from Galway in Ireland is Catherine Noone. She's a lawyer and a former Fine Gael politician. You're all very welcome to Roundtable, and a Happy New Year to all of you. Catherine, do you feel Israel has scored an own goal by closing its embassy in Dublin?
One word answer, yes. Absolutely. I think any country should be very hesitant to close an embassy because really it's disadvantageous to their own citizens first and foremost. And I think nothing is ever achieved without dialogue. I mean, the Israelis can be as sensitive as they like about the approach that Ireland has taken from a Palestinian perspective, but it really is. It is an own goal. It makes no sense from a diplomatic point of view. They lobbied hard to get that embassy in the first place. And to me, it's an absurdity to have closed it.
And Catherine, do you feel this was done in anger then?
Well, it felt like, a very quick reaction to Ireland's stance on the war. And, I'd say the rest of the world are thinking, why are the Israelis picking a fight with Ireland? Because we're the peacemakers. We've lived this type of scenario. We've found peace, at least relative peace, 99% of the time. And, why is Israel, taking such exception to our behavior? It seems quite childish, for want of a better word.
Let's bring in Yossi. Yossi, just talk to me about the Israeli thinking here. Why have they done this? As Catherine says, Ireland is a land that has found peace, worked very, very hard for peace, promotes peace on the international stage, and yet Israel is doing this?
I think it was a mistake. You don't close an embassy. You try to enter into dialogue. Yes, some of the criticism was unpleasant. That's all right. Portraying the Israeli ambassador on placards with blood on her face, I think it should have not happened. But it's part of the democratic debate. Some of it is better, some of it is not in good taste. Closing the embassy is a mistake, because again, as was said here, it's about dialogue between friendly countries. Now, I think it was just an easy, cheap shot for the new foreign minister in Israel. Gideon Saar was just appointed, trying to show his credentials as a right wing. It was easier because some of the reason given makes no sense. Because if Israel closed the embassy in Ireland because Ireland recognized Palestine in a state and joined South Africa in the case in the ICJ, why not closing the embassy in South Africa or in Colombia or in Mexico that all did exactly the same? So it seems to be as something that someone, and mainly the foreign minister, so it's an easy, cheap shot, getting some brownie points with the right in Israel.
And Kamel, give me your take from a Palestinian perspective.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yes, Israel at the moment is drunk on power and impunity. So it thinks it can do whatever it likes. I think it's a serial breach of international law, a serial breach of missed opportunities to make peace. So I was a little surprised only because here it is in the United Nations, which if you wanted to go to the end game, it would say, I can't stay in this organization, I'm going to leave. But obviously it knows it has the American veto, and therefore it is very much interested in staying in the United Nations. But over the years, every time there's been an opportunity for peace, it chooses to move away from that. And Israel always wants to increase its legitimacy. Through this step, it has increased its illegitimacy, because if you don't have an embassy in a country that you call an ally, then you're not legitimate, quite simply.
Catherine, there are other very pro-Palestinian countries in Europe, Spain and Norway, for example, both recognizing Palestine last year, as Ireland did. But the Israelis have not picked a fight with Oslo or Madrid.
Yeah, I think maybe on social media and in various outlets that Irish people are maybe more vocal about their opposition to the war, and that on one level, but also Simon Harris has been quite vocal on the issue, and he's our leader, and I think it's more in their face, if you know what I mean. Who knows why? I mean, we're a bad country to pick on in a way. We're popular, and I would say that, there's two kinds of people in the world, those who are Irish and those who wish they were Irish, but I would think that. But, it doesn't make any sense to pick on us. And I think it was a knee-jerk reaction that has done them more harm than good. And I'd echo most of what has been said there, and there's a chance that the embassy, I read an article where it stated that the Palestinian Connecticut Museum is looking to relocate in that building for symbolic reasons, so that would be another, fail on the Israeli part from their perspective.
Yossi, just come in on that point about Spain and Norway, other countries in Europe who have been very strongly pro-Palestine and have spoken out in the last 12 to 18 months in particular. And yet Israel hasn't gone after Madrid, it hasn't shut its embassy in Oslo.
Yeah, those are powerful countries that they won't like to pick up a fight. Not to suggest Ireland is not an important country, but I think all the debate here between pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian is oversimplifying that. Recognizing a Palestinian state at this point, more than 30 years after Oslo, shouldn't be such a revolutionary step. It should be very basic. I think we should look for more countries, everyone, recognize Palestine, a Palestinian state. And no, recognizing a Palestinian state is not a reward for terrorism. It's not a reward for Hamas. It's recognizing that the Palestinians have the right for self-determination. The case in court, again, personally, I wish actually South Africa and Ireland and every country would have actually put all the effort on a ceasefire rather genocide case, because the case in the ICJ hasn't saved a single person in Gaza. Ceasefire would have saved many lives in Gaza. So, but we can debate it. But this is part of the diplomatic way. That's why we sometimes around these tables debating what we disagree. If Israel is going to take, because Israel, I think as Kamel said, looked for legitimacy, looked to open embassies around the world. There were times that there were no East European embassies in Israel and many other countries. didn't have embassies. Israel longed for this kind of recognition, tried to even symbolically reverse it, is as you started this program, is a non-goal.
Kamel, as a Palestinian, what would you say to that then, that the Irish and the Spanish and the Norwegians should have pushed harder for a ceasefire instead of joining South Africa in calling out a genocide?
I think work is needed on all fronts, to be quite honest. After 70-odd years of the Palestinians not having their rights recognized. I mean, there are still countries who talk about Palestinian rights, but they haven't done anything, like the UK. The UK says the settlements are illegal, but it hasn't done anything to stop them. I think South Africa, for us as Palestinians, we were absolutely chuffed and delighted that it brought the case against Israel. It may not as yet have saved any lives, but I tell you what, when you listen to the various speeches made by the various lawyers, it put on the table Israel's criminality. And it was for the first time that we heard that in such a prominent court. So, no, I'm with all fronts. Don't forget that Israel fights the Palestinians on all fronts. When the Palestinians chose boycott, they called it economic terror. When they did go to the ICC, they called it legal terror. And now with the recognition and so on, I'm sure that somebody's thinking about political terror. So whatever the Palestinians do, Israel says, I don't want any entity, anything called Palestine. The Palestinian people should leave. So this is why I think on all fronts we should be working. And I did tweet when Ireland made its decision, and I said, thank you, Ireland, for crossing Israel's red lines, because actually Israel sets red lines, which it breaches itself. Just very quickly, the 1701, the resolution between Lebanon and Israel, that's the only United Nations Security Council resolution that Israel has been fighting to have implemented. What about the ones that apply to you and to the end of the occupation and so on?
Catherine, should Ireland be worried about any kind of backlash from Israel now economically? Because a lot of big American tech companies have locations in Ireland, they have sites, they employ people, they pay a lot of tax in Ireland. Should Ireland be concerned on that front?
Ireland is concerned in general, especially with Donald Trump coming into power in the States, and the Israeli lobby, I suppose, for want of a better word, in the States is very, very active and very well supported politically. So yes, Ireland should be worried and will be making diplomatic efforts in that space for absolute sure and certain. We're hugely reliant on foreign direct investment from the States. And as you quite rightly point out, many of those big firms will have Israeli people in powerful positions. So yes.
Yossi, you mentioned social media earlier on. At the very outset of Israel's war in Gaza, I noticed a piece of communication online from a woman working for the Israeli embassy in Dublin, and she blamed Irish people for building tunnels for Hamas. Now, she was not the ambassador, she was a member of staff. That tweet got deleted very, very quickly, but it's still out there and it can be found. I mean, talk to me about why someone would say something like that. I mean, what do the Israelis genuinely think of Irish people?
I think actually Israel love Ireland and love visiting Ireland and love the Irish people and definitely love Irish culture. So I don't see that. It's more on government to government level than has to do with the people. I never detected any animosity by Israel towards Ireland. How many people visit Ireland? I visit Ireland and I had a wonderful time in Ireland. So I think why anyone will dislike Irish people or Ireland. So I don't see that. By the way, the tunnels, it's the first time I hear about that. And if anyone, if anyone wrote something like this without a shred of evidence, I think Yossi, that's a big mistake. It
Yossi,
should not have happened.
Can I ask you, as a Jewish man visiting Ireland, we've read a lot in recent weeks that Ireland is an anti-Semitic country. Have you ever picked up on any vibe like that? Or have you ever had any incident or anyone say anything to you?
Yeah, I never encountered. Listen, let's put it like this. Antisemitism exists, Islamophobia exists, racism exists in our society. They all should be eradicated. We shouldn't be tolerant to any signs of racism of any kind, any discrimination. It exists in Ireland, it exists in the UK, it exists everywhere. And there is, surprise, surprise, there is racism in Israel too. towards minority. So this has to be there. The problem is that many times there is the conflate, and the Israeli government, especially Netanyahu, deliberately conflate between legitimate criticism of Israeli policy and antisemitism. And by that actually does a very bad job for fighting against antisemitism. Criticism of the occupation, criticism of the way Israel conduct the war in Gaza, criticism of many violations of human rights is not antisemitism, it's a legitimate criticism. Antisemitism is different.
Kamel, that has been the Israeli government's go-to point. Every single time anyone has called them out for what they're doing in Gaza, if anyone questions the Israeli state, they're anti-Semitic.
Well, even before that, I mean, as I'm sure Yossi will agree, they've been doing that pre-7th of October, just like they've been killing and maiming and destroying and everything. It's just a continuation. But they've run out of excuses for the genocide, and it is a genocide what they are carrying out. When you kill a whole family completely, they're eradicated from the register, and then you count another 20 families. To me, they've each been genocided as a family, and the collective is genocide. And I know that's not the legal definition, but that's what they feel in Gaza. That's what they see. A man was speaking yesterday saying, I buried my father. Then 6 months later, my mother, all my sisters. So the point about it is that there is definitely everyone has the absolute legitimate right to criticize Israel and to call it a criminal state, to call its acts terrorism. People have the right to do that, and of course people can say no, it isn't. That's fine. But at the end of the day, what it has been conducting in Gaza since this atrocity on the 7th of October happened, has been just way beyond any humanity. You cannot find any excuse for what it's doing, and therefore to blame people for hating Jews to do it. They hate Israeli policies. They hate Israeli soldiers who carry out these criminal acts. It's nothing to do with that.
Catherine, I want to talk about this branding of Ireland and Irish people as the most anti-Semitic in Europe. Give me your thoughts on Irish people calling out the genocide and what's happening in Gaza and the fact that this is Benjamin Netanyahu's knee-jerk response.
Ireland are not anti-Israel or anti-Semitic. I visited Israel as a politician. You know, I think most Irish people have absolutely no problem with Israelis whatsoever. And, you know, I would agree with the comments of both the previous speakers. We're just pro-peace. You know, we don't want genocide and war in Palestine. We relate and have empathy, massive empathy for the people of Gaza, as most of the world do. Any right-thinking person is going to feel very upset that people are dying on a daily basis in Gaza, and when it's avoidable. And, you know, Netanyahu isn't a fan of Ireland at the moment. You know, that's fine. You know, but we will always stand by our principles as a country. And it's not so much about the Israelis for us, in the sense that it's about peace. We want to see peace in Gaza, and we don't want to see suffering, and we don't want to see massive breaches of human rights on a minute-by-minute basis. You know, we're not anti-Semitic. We're just pro-peace for the people of Gaza.
Yossi, do you think many Jewish people would be surprised to know that Ireland was the first country in Europe to recognise Judaism and protect Jewish people in its constitution? And Ireland did this, the year is important, 1937, at a time when many countries in Europe were turning their backs on the Jewish people. The Irish enshrined that protection in their constitution.
Well, since I was surprised to hear it here first time, so I assume many others would be surprised to hear that. But yeah, I mean, it's an important fact, and probably more Jewish Israelis and Jewish people around the world should hear that. But again, we shouldn't conflate the debate between what's happening in Gaza. They need not only peace in Gaza, we need a comprehensive peace between the Israelis and Palestinians. We should move towards a peace which will lead to a two-state solution and recognize that all people that live there deserve the same political, civil, and human rights. This should be the debate, because this is exactly where the people like Netanyahu want to put people that criticize Israel. They want to put them and say that we justify, oh, let me tell you, we are not anti-Semitic. No, I don't, you don't have everyone, not every Irish person should get up in the morning and say, oh, by the way, I'm not anti-Semitic. Those who are anti-Semites should be called up, and those who are not, that criticize Israel, at the end of the day, we can have a debate whether the criticism is based on facts, whether it's merited debate, maybe it's not, but it's a legitimate debate within democratic society. The Netanyahu government doesn't like it. That's why we need, again, to separate between the two. We need also to remember, because there was a comment, the Hamas. What Hamas did on October 7th was an atrocity, was a massacre. I think us as human beings, we should adhere to our values and principles. Whoever behaved badly, whoever committed war crimes should be called out and face exactly the same treatment.
Kamel, can I ask you, how do you feel about the news that the building vacated by Israel in Dublin could be turned into a Palestinian museum?
Well, I'd like Palestinian culture to be spread all over the world. There's a Palestinian museum in one of the American states, as there are in other places. I would be very pleased to go and visit the Palestinian Museum in Ireland, wherever it is cited. But of course, we also remember that in Iran, after the Israeli embassy was closed, the Palestinian embassy was placed, as far as I can remember, in its place. So there are sorts of precedents of going completely the other way. And that, we started off by saying, is Israel committing an own goal? Yes, so this is another one. So if there is a Palestinian museum in that building, it's the best way of keeping the narrative that the Palestinians are a people with culture, with history, and having it in Ireland, having it in Europe where people can come and see it, I think would be tremendous.
Catherine, you've worked all your life in politics and law. Give me your assessment of where relations now stand between Ireland and Israel. I mean, can this be fixed?
Yes, of course it can be fixed, but it's probably quite far from being fixed when the last act that has occurred is that the embassy in our country has been closed. I'm delighted that you mentioned that about Ireland in 1937, or was it 1936, you said. I had forgotten that. And that's very significant. Ireland has always been a friend to Israel. And, really, the fact that they're at war, it affects the whole world. And, I think that the Trump coming into power, I think that will have a big impact on, maybe not particularly between the Irish and Israeli relationship, but it could have a big impact for Ireland, as I mentioned before. So can it be fixed? Yes. Is it anywhere close to being fixed at the moment? I wouldn't have thought so. Are we willing to... it'd be very hard for the relationship to be fixed as long as the situation is as it is, in the sense that Israel, they just closed their embassy, and, sorry to be repetitive, but it's not exactly a very good diplomatic move for Israel where Ireland's concerned.
Yossi, do you think in years to come, when Netanyahu is no longer the leader of Israel, that someone might at some point think, let's build bridges here?
Yeah, I'm sure about it. It's a completely needless diplomatic rift between two countries that are friendly countries. Obviously, Ireland is part of the European Union, and Israel has close relation with the European Union. It's just a needless thing. Again, going back to what I said earlier, Gideon Saar, being new foreign minister, tried to make the point, got the point across. Now, it's easier to break things than to rebuild them, unfortunately. It will take time. And sadly, I think it will take probably for the Netanyahu government to go. But I have little doubt if a more reasonable government comes to power in Israel, one of the first things we'll do is to reopen the embassy, forgive me, in Dublin. And I hope Dublin will welcome Israeli diplomats with open arms.
Kamel, just give me your sense of the past 18 months as a Palestinian, seeing the support you've had in Ireland, from Dublin to Cork to Galway to Belfast. People are out every week campaigning, calling for a ceasefire, calling for the release of the hostages, and generally being good human beings.
Well, it's been the support across the world, but in Ireland and in the UK has been unbelievable. As you said, lots of cities in Ireland have hosted marches. But here in London, to have had 1 million people march in one of the marches, we've had 22 of them. If there isn't a march in London, I was at one in Birmingham over the weekend. So I think people are just horrified that their leaders have lost their humanity. And of course, I don't include Ireland in that because of what they've done. But they've lost their humanity. I mean, for the Americans to be now signing off another £8 billion to supply Israel with arms, which it will use to do what? To slaughter children and women. So I think people see that. And the legacy of this atrocious attack by Israel on the Palestinians will be that people will see Israel always in that light as a criminal state, a state that, look at what it's doing in Lebanon, what it's doing in Syria, occupying more land. And then the Americans, because they are complete partners. The question used to be, are the Americans... No, they're complete partners in supplying Israel with these weapons, and the political, raising of the hand at the Security Council. And even in Lebanon today, they're not telling the Israelis to leave. They're looking at ways that there are agreements between Lebanon and America, one between America and Israel, all designed to protect Israel. When what it has done is barbaric. And the world will not forget that. And the Israelis will feel that for, decades to come, I'm afraid.
Catherine in Galway, Yossi and Kamel here in the studio. Thank you all for your input on this one. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable, TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, goodbye. Thank you for watching.